want to walk you into Mark chapter 5 real quick. I think it's an appropriate story for today. Jesus has just been with his disciples. They've heard all these teachings. They get in this boat and he tells the storm to be still, and it does. They get to the other side of the shore and they end up in a place that we know as the Gerasenes. It's a town that belongs to the Greeks in the region. One of 10. They call it the Decapolis. That's a fancy word. It's like the Twin Cities. It's the 10 cities. We're just the 2, right? But, I mean, you got Richfield and Crystal and all that stuff. They just call it the Twin Cities, right? So the Decapolis is like the Twin Cities, but it's not Jewish. It's Greek. You're going to see the Decapolis pop up later in the scripture, but this is the first time we see it in the life of Jesus. So Jesus lands on the shore, and there at the shore side is a town called the Gerasene. And there is a guy, the very first guy to greet Jesus is a guy who we never hear his name. But for whatever reason, God saw so fit to tell us his story. You ever feel like that place where you feel like a nameless person in the world? And maybe no one, like the world isn't the bar in Boston that we hear cheers from, where everybody knows your name. Most of us are nameless to the world. A handful of people know who we are. And here's this guy, this nameless guy, who shows up with all of his trouble. And he's the first person to greet Jesus on the shore. And he doesn't greet Jesus on the shore because he wants something good from Jesus. This guy is filled with demonic possession. And it's the demons that recognize him. And they think Jesus has showed up on the scene to do something about them. And the scripture picks up like this. As soon as he got out of the boat, he being Jesus, a man with an unclean spirit came out of the tombs and met him. He lived in the tombs. I don't care what the trouble is, whether it's trauma from your past. Guys, every one of you who shared a story, man, you didn't start with addiction. You started with abandonment. Did y'all catch that? I'm a rape baby. My mom was raped when she was 14 years old. I don't know anything about my biological father necessarily. Not that I may want to, but you go through life and you know that the guy who is your father is just a criminal rapist. That's encouraging, right? My mom was 15. She didn't know how to take care of a kid. My story and your story is very similar, including the gangs, including the drugs, including the crimes, until Jesus. Hey, I don't care who you are, in this room or online. It could be past trauma. It could be the quiet hour addiction of clicking onto screens and websites you shouldn't be looking at night. It could be cheating money, lying to your spouse. It could be hurt from your childhood. It could be any kind of thing. When you live in that kind of life, it's like living in the tombs. A man with an unclean spirit came out of the tombs and met him. He lived in the tombs, and no one was able to restrain him anymore. Not even the chains. He had often been bound with chains and shackles, but he continued to smash them. No one was strong enough to subdue him. Night and day among the tombs and on the mountains, he was always crying out and cutting himself with stones. When he saw Jesus from a distance, he ran and knelt down before him, and he cried out with a loud voice, "What would you have with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? I beg you before God, don't torment me." For Jesus had already said, "Come out of the man, you unclean spirit." Jesus asked, "What is your name, demon?" He says, "My name is Legion, because we are many." And again, the demons begged Jesus earnestly not to send them out of the region. A large herd of pigs was there, feeding on the hillside. Now, if you don't know the region that this is Greek, this is your first sign that this is not a Jewish community, right? In the ancient world, Jews would have nothing to do with pigs at all. So you know this is not like the places Jesus has been walking. Jesus has gone to a place he doesn't normally go and associate with, and he runs into a person in a place he wouldn't normally go who's in desperate need of help. Don't miss that, church. The man, he gave them permission to enter the pigs. The unclean spirits came out. They entered the pigs. The herd of about 2,000 ran down a steep bank into the sea and drowned themselves. The man who tended them ran off and reported to the town and the countryside, and people went to see what happened. They came to Jesus and saw the man who had been demon-possessed sitting there, dressed, because he wasn't clothed, in his right mind, and they were afraid. Those who had seen it described to them what had happened to the demon-possessed man and told about the pigs. They began to beg him being Jesus, to leave their region. You couldn't deal with the guy. Jesus heals the guy, and the people who saw the healing didn't like it because it cost them something. And so they begged Jesus to leave, and so he does. Jesus isn't going to beg you to come alongside of him. Not one of us. It's an invitation. Follow me. It's not a force. And we have to choose. And these guys, the whole town was like, get Jesus out of here. He killed our pigs. As Jesus was getting into the boat, the man who had been demon-possessed begged him that he could stay with Jesus. Let me go with you. You've done so much for me. These people don't even want it. Let me go with you. And Jesus says to him, go home to your own people and report to them what the Lord has done for you and how he has had mercy on you. So that man went out and began to proclaim in the Decapolis what Jesus had done, and they were amazed. The very first missionary in the Bible is a person that no one wanted anything to do with because of all of his past problems. Check that out. Not a pastor, not someone who had all the right education, who had all the right neighborhood that he grew up in or she grew up in, someone who was living among the tombs that no one wanted anything to do with, is the first person Jesus commissions to go tell the good news. Isn't that cool? So what does that say to you guys? And what does it say to you guys? There is a place for you to go and tell what God has done for you. There is a place for you to tell good news. Like you know and I know if you're over there singing in this choir, you've got some good news to tell. Because it's like it's a thing, right? It's a program that comes up and not everybody gets to be in the choir. But what happens when you leave Teen Challenge? You still got good news to tell. You still got good news to tell. Right? My life, since I was 18 years old, I got saved at 18, facing jail time, all kinds of stuff. I've heard your stories. We could go story for story all day. I got saved at 18. And it's like God took me. And the gospel says this. You know this? It says that he takes you from death to life. He takes you from darkness to light. It's not like he's this. He takes you from being a stranger to being a son. Instantly. Every single one of us, at some level, are like the man from the Gerasenes. We have stuff, different levels of stuff, but we've got stuff. And sometimes our stuff tells us don't tell anybody else about what God's doing because they wouldn't believe it anyway. I remember after getting saved and Jesus rescuing me, we had a few weeks before high school graduation, and some people knew about all the trouble I was in. I got saved, I got cleared, like I don't have a criminal record today, like the judge cleared me, and we're sitting around our senior class. I kind of went to a small school at this point, and we're talking about what we're going to do after graduation. And most of my friends didn't know this part of the story yet. And I said, I'm going to go be a pastor. Like, most of my friends didn't know that Jesus had just performed this radical rescue in my soul. Teachers didn't know. You could just see it. It was like, this is probably not appropriate for church. Corey, forgive me, darling. Have you ever been in a space and you broke gas accidentally? I mean, sometimes when you're with your closest friends, you do it on purpose. That's what I've heard anyway. But you did it accidentally, and everybody just like the record player at the club just scratched, right? And the dance floor stops immediately, and they all look at you. The day that I said, I'm going to be a pastor because Jesus rescued me, you should have seen the room. And there was one girl, I'm not going to say her whole name. Her name was Kelly. I had the biggest crush on Kelly through high school. Corey knows this already. Like, I shot my shot with Kelly freshman year, sophomore year, junior year, senior year. It was like, Victor Wembanyama, rejection, 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 rejection. She blocked every shot. And she sat there. She was the first person to speak. God can't use you because you're too bad. Jesus never said he couldn't use me. Jesus freed me from the tomb, and he sent me out. If you go 2 chapters later in Mark, Jesus returns to the Decapolis. And when he shows up, everybody in the town meets him, these 10 regions. And they're begging him, heal me, save me, lead me, cleanse me. How do you think they know who Jesus is? Because the first time they said, get out of here. 2 chapters later, he's back. And now they're begging him to be involved in his life. Because that guy, Mr. Unclean, don't be around me guy, that guy went and did exactly what Jesus told him to do. Go live your life, go home, be clean, and tell the good news of what the Lord has done for you. We've all been healed by Jesus of different things. If you're here today and you've never made that commitment to Jesus, I'm going to hang around. When these guys are through singing, they got one more song to sing, right? When they're through singing today, I'm going to hang around. Come talk to me. I would love to tell you more about the power of Jesus and his rescue. Some of us here today know the power of that rescue. You may not have the time to volunteer with Teen Challenge. You may not have the ability to get into that space to mentor. You may actually love your job, right? You don't want a new job. But here's something you can do. You can participate. Where did I put that envelope? There it is. Out back at the table, there's an envelope. This envelope takes cash, credit, and check as a way to support. You can use the envelopes in your seats. Make sure you put Teen Challenge on there. anything that you put in the offering basket, if you write a check, make sure you put Teen Challenge. Is it on the screen? Where is it? If you write a check, put MNTC in the pay to the order of line. Our ushers will take all of